All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our special Board of Education meeting. Today, Saturday, July 25th, and the time is approximately 12:14 p.m. Second item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody could stand up for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. And the next item on our agenda is the approval of the emergency suspension of policy during pandemic, policy number 6114.81. Before we discuss and move this, I'm going to have Dr. Costanzo speak a little further about this policy.
Thank you, Heidi, and good afternoon, board members. Last week, the district central office worked with Shipman and Goodwin, who did a thorough review of our reopening plan. In the debrief of that review, Tom Mooney and his associate raised the question about whether the district had a COVID-19 override policy that would really function in two ways. One would be that this policy would serve to override, suspend, or modify any existing policies in our manual that run in conflict with the COVID-19 pandemic. So as the CSDE and the governor's office make adjustments during this pandemic, it has a direct impact on policies like student attendance, procurement of materials, supplies. There's a list on the third page of this policy that gives you the breadth of the different policies that will likely be impacted. So because we have a manual of pre-COVID-19 policies, it really restricts the board and the superintendent's ability to carry on the operations of the school district during this 2020-2021 school year. So you'll see this is a CABE model policy. Although Shipman has its own model, they suggested we use CABE because our policy services come through CABE, and this is a good apples to apples application of an emergency policy. And then you'll see here toward the bottom of the first page, the second thing that this policy grants the board to do is grants temporary powers to the superintendent of schools, which we think will be necessary, waiving some policies that you can find later here, but doing some other things too. And I won't go through all of these, but you'll see here that there are 7 points here that provide some additional power to the superintendent during this emergency situation. Some that we thought were most important, and the reason for acting on this today is it allows the superintendent to enter into contracts without board approval for any dollar amount related to purchase of materials, equipment, supplies, services for sanitation, cleaning, technology, etc. I know Dr. Estrella will keep you informed and will communicate with you as decisions are being made, but some of these procurements will need to really happen quite fast in order for us to have the turnaround time to have classrooms prepared should we go to a full reopening or anything else.
I just want to add, Frank, my commitment to the board is that when any of these matters have to be done, unless I'm able to engage the executive committee, I will make sure that we send an email detailing the expense if necessary, so that everyone in the board is informed. Because I think that's an expedited way to keep you informed while decisions are being made. So that's a commitment that we'll make to make sure that everybody is abreast before something is executed at the district level if it's necessary.
Can I make a request from a finance committee lens that when we do an order and we make a purchase, that we also have a conversation about where that will be offset in the existing budget if additional funding is not available from the state, city, or federal level? Because if the staff is making that decision unilaterally, and it means we have to cut other programs, we have a responsibility to communicate that to the public so that their expectations are set realistically. We had to spend this on COVID stuff, and so this year we can't do X program. That is a deep fear of mine, that will happen without a community conversation.
So within the email communication, what we will do is provide, if it's immediately available, the funding line that will be utilized. If not, in a subsequent email, we will make sure to provide the funding line.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is, really the summary of this policy. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there any other further discussion or questions? Sherelle?
I just have a quick question for Alan. Did the city or the state give you a COVID budget for things like, the social distancing, the plexiglass, and things like that? Did they give you a budget?
So through the CARES Act, those resources have been utilized to buy those essentials. One of the things that we're collaborating right now with the city, and I know Barbara can engage in a deeper conversation around that as well, is potentially all of the cleaning items, because they can be filed to FEMA, working with the city so that they can purchase those items for us to maximize resources, because those funds are reimbursable through FEMA. So I've been in conversations with the mayor in terms of how can we most effectively maximize those resources.
In the policy, it says
So
temporary powers, under the temporary power. So I think it would be helpful for the board to have an understanding of what the word temporary means, because we essentially went into a state of emergency in March, and it proceeded like that.
It's actually, the language will be answered in the motion language that Tom Loney has provided. So temporary refers to the remainder of the pandemic is the definition for temporary.
So that means that the administration could move unilaterally without board approval for another year? Or, I mean, we hope that we have some vaccines and treatments by January, but that seems like a particularly long time to proceed without oversight from the elected body. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I don't understand it to be a lack of oversight. I understand this policy to be put in place to help assure the safety of kids, to entrust our leader to do what she knows is appropriate for taking action. It is concerning not knowing the duration of this pandemic, but I don't understand this policy to be that leadership is operating without oversight or approval from the executive team. It's as it relates to executing decisions that are centered around ensuring student safety.
Right. So you just said something that was really interesting. When you say executive team, do you mean the executive committee of the board or executive team of the cabinet?
As it relates to what? Your question is asking what I said? I'm sorry, I just need to know what you need clarification.
So you said that our leader that we chose would do this in collaboration with the executive team, and I didn't know if you meant the cabinet or the executive committee of the board.
No, so, well, my language doesn't change what is on the policy we're approving. So, as we just stated, in terms of what this is allowing her to do is simply assure the safety of our kids. And I want to make sure that a misinterpretation of the policy doesn't move away from that piece. And I share your concern and frustration around not knowing the end of the pandemic, but more so around how not knowing the timeline for how the process will be when we know our kids are safe. That's where my concern comes from. And I just wanted to simply restate that for the purpose of clarifying how I understand this policy to be. And it's something that I don't see Alex operating without this management and oversight from us.
So, let's take the example of the reopening plan. We had to work really fast, and pull a lot of people from a lot of places to cross-pollinate. When the reopening task force was formed and the liaisons were chosen, there was an understanding that there would be regular, updates of the board as to the status. What was uncomfortable for me as a board member, as an elected person who's accountable to the community, I never saw the reopening plan before it went to the state. And clearly we're able to meet in public, so we could have had a public meeting to review the reopening plan and give it a blessing. And we didn't choose to do that. And that, it's good that we had our liaisons in the room. But I didn't feel that the things that the community was asking me to make sure were handled, I had the capacity to do that for them. And so, as we talk about the board as a backstop for the community, and we talk about that in regards to policy and budget, which are our two main roles, I feel that we could, I agree, she needs to be able to order supplies, close schools, all that without board approval. I completely agree. At what point does it move out of an emergency situation and into the new normal in which we have to choose how we operate? So I might tweak the language a little bit to say for a period of 2 weeks, because I think 2 weeks is about the time that it could take to find us a time when all of us could Zoom or whatever we need to do to be together to discuss something. But to approve a policy that's ongoing for months or a year, it's a little uncomfortable for me. But I mean, I defer to, of course, the will of the majority.
Awesome. You go ahead, Kim.
Again, this is all unprecedented times, things that are happening, and it's happening very quickly. And I agree with Godfrey that it's all about the safety of the children. I disagree in the fact that we don't know really what's going on. But we have to have faith in the committee, in the superintendent, and all the individuals, because we're not talking 12 people, we're talking at least 60 people. It's been on Zoom, everything's going on, and everything is based on the safety and the education of the children. So I myself think that this is a good move because we don't know when COVID's gonna finish. We don't know when vaccine's gonna come out, if it's gonna come out or anything like that. Any other changes that come along, we can make decisions on those. But as we stand right now, we can't wait to have meetings. As it is, everybody's so stretched out with all the other meetings that we have. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have the meetings, but I'm saying that I'm very comfortable, and as a group, I hope that we are comfortable to move ahead with this because we can't wait. I mean, school is right around the corner. Safety of the children comes first.
So I understand both points, I understand the accountability to the public, but I'm just looking at this as an emergency, and she needs to make a decision like on the cuff. We're giving her the authority, trusting, that she has the best interest of the students in mind, that we're giving her that during an emergency. I do understand your point though.
The definition,
Public
what's
does.
the definition of an emergency and how long is the tenure of an emergency?
But I just think the emergency can arise and we can, I don't want to use that case it happens, anything can happen at
Right.
any time. So then I think, once we sort of know what's going on, then maybe, they revisit it. But I think for now, because it's so uncertain, like we don't know, and she has to be able to mark, like, at one point, I think there were 13 states on the list, now there's 31, like things can just change, it's so fluid. So,
And this specifically says COVID-19 through the whole thing. We
And I'm just thinking
in policy have discussed emergencies in general, but this one specific is COVID.
And it's
So-
constantly evolving, you know,
Yeah,
and everything
that's-
is, to Cheryl's point, Diane, and I understand your concern, Barbara, but it's changing daily. You turn the news on and 5 minutes later it's something different. So again, it's evolving, it's changing, and I think that for Alex at the helm working on this, we want to be able to have that confidence in her ability, which we do, that if something changes, she has the authority to do that. And we don't know how long this might be. It might be 2 weeks, might be 3 weeks, might be 4 months. We just don't know at this point.
Yeah, and I think,
Sure.
I think to Barbara's point, I thank you for the feedback in terms of the opening plan and the submission. I just hope the board understands the time constraints that we were under, and one of the reasons why we were having the Wednesday meetings publicized to make sure that everybody was aware of where we were. Even in our last conversation last Wednesday, there were a lot of questions that we were trying to decipher. Because as you know, a district that is overpopulated and having to go into the school year in yellow is not an easy problem to resolve. So there was a lot of thinking. And like I expressed to the task force, the proposal is submitted, but it doesn't mean that the conversations end. Those conversations are ongoing. I think if the board wishes to have a deeper conversation about the plan after you have an opportunity to read the plan, I am open to that because I know that the expedited nature in which I came into the role and then what needed to be executed created certain challenges. So I'm definitely open to maybe having a Zoom meeting with board members that's open, obviously, to discuss the proposal in greater detail and also to get further insight because it's not a done deal and we're still open to really thinking through the best ways of engaging this work in August.
I think that would help a lot because, we get the calls and the messages and whatever of how people are feeling about it. And, I think ensuring the community that it's still a work in progress and it's not set in stone will go a long way towards, landing somewhere that everybody feels safe and comfortable with.
Can I raise my hand?
Sarah, go ahead. Yes.
Okay. I would just say, I have to translate. I'm sorry. That's also, the reopening plan isn't, but this policy is Alex's ability to make decisions for people's safety quickly. And I think it would create a persistent safety issue for us to not approve the policy. So I just wanted to reframe things in that way.
I totally agree that in emergency circumstances, this is absolutely appropriate. My only request of the body is to define temporary emergency.
Again, I
It's
think,
hard to do that though. I
It
understand,
is.
it's just very difficult to
Plus,
put time.
this isn't our emergency per se policy. This
Right.
is strictly COVID.
It's strictly COVID related, right? And I think it's also important for us to separate out our discomfort with the uncertainty that exists, right? With a policy that serves to address Alex's ability to mitigate that uncertainty and make decisions. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're in an uncertain circumstance. The policy isn't gonna change or not change that, you know?
So just say like if a student comes in and the student has a high fever, and so it's determined that the student has COVID, should she have to wait, like, pause to, you know?
No,
I'm just using that as a scenario as far as an emergency. Something she has to make like a snap decision, she doesn't have time to vet it out, and we have to just trust
of course.
that she's gonna do the right thing, or there's consequences.
You hold me accountable.
And that even from the governance discussion on Thursday night, that utilizing technology to be able to send a quick voice note to every board member, not because we need to approve her choice, but that you're able to assure the community that we're on top of it and we all, we're all working for the best outcome for whatever the bad situation may be.
And that's my commitment.
I think Franklin's done that, and I think
Yeah.
Brenda Brenda's done that too, like, you know, we had to close the school, but they closed one of the schools today.
Right.
They had to shut down. So I think, you know, unless I'm missing something, that they can.
I think it's been better in the last year or so. You know, Julie did a big push when she was on the board that we do find out things earlier. And, you know, we did used to have a situation where we would get calls or social media comments or messages before we knew about it. And that's a terrible, terrible position to be in. So,
You know, as it relates to COVID, we have, sorry, I just cut you off.
thank you, I appreciate that. I was just gonna say that I felt that the notification surrounding the summer school situation was appropriate and I wasn't caught off guard because that was handled well. So, I do think we made a lot of progress in that area. For sure.
I want to be mindful that Alex has been, you know, pivoting, and while recent changes from state guidance has been happening throughout the last few weeks. And I think, you know, our ability to just kind of weather and maintain appropriate communication, but still, you know, in trusting in the leader we have, you know, I think we've been able to give attention to details, you know, as best as possible. There's no model or current situation that says here's what works, because the context of the communities aren't factored in. So I just wanted to, being mindful of that, I really believe it contributes to any angst we have, because this is the unknown, and it's not clear when we will know. You know, but the assurance of our kids' safety being put first, to me, is, you know, the short-term goal. You know, that I just want to ensure we are allowed to be kept in place.
Any other further discussion or questions?
So I think from Barbara, I'm just hearing that if you do make a decision, let us know, like, ASAP, whatever your model is, whether you know, Frank and Bob,
Brenda.
and have them shoot something out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, for me, you know, from a resource lens, if we make a big move versus a small move, that's something where it would be great if we at least had a day's heads up to be able to get input. So, for instance, if we're buying furniture that will also stay with the district, and it's a big purchase or whatever, or the plexi, having the opportunity to understand why we made that choice and the impact on the budget, where it's going to come from to make that happen. Because there are a lot of safety things out there for the boards across the country to consider as they try and make their children safe. And
I think we have a couple of board members that have a hard stop.
okay, got it. Okay.
And I think a lot of this discussion is really open, but I don't think it's necessarily germane to this particular
Okay, thank
policy.
you, Sarah. Yeah, moving on.
Yeah, Sarah, do you want me to make the motion, or do you want me to do the motion?
Yeah, no, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Barbara. I mean, I think as we discussed, everybody has different views, and I understand that, but I think, again, we have Alex at the helm, we trust and value her opinion. She can send a quick email if there's something time restraints, if she can do that, but I think these are very quick decisions that I think we have to act on quickly, and we're trusting her to make those kind of decisions. So I'd like to, first I'm about to read the language that Tom Mooney had suggested, which I will, but the first thing I'd like to ask for approval of the emergency suspension of policy during pandemic, policy 6114.81. Do I have a motion to approve? Godfrey, thank you. Sherelle, second. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. We've moved that the Board of Education hereby adopts the amended key policies addressing the COVID-19 pandemic until further action by the board when the pandemic is over, and further moved that in cases where the terms of these amended key policies addressing the COVID-19 pandemic are inconsistent with the other board policies, the terms of these amended key policies shall control for the duration of the pandemic. Thank you, everyone. So moved. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special, well, not special, but, yes, actually special board meeting for today? Diana? Barbara? All in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Barbara, I'll make sure that you,
You know, I'm just worried that